right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon's 11th annual Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit. Thank you for being here today. Whether you're joining us virtually or in person at one of our many host locations gathered around the state, thank you for being here, and we are glad to have you. My name is Taylor Sylvie. I work as the Public Relations and Public Health Coordinator at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. Today we gather to share and create hope for our common home. Our common home that we call Earth and Oregon is changing dramatically. We see this in some of the most recent natural disasters that have hit close to home, like the wildfires of 2020 and the severe heat and winter storms we are experiencing each year. We see this in the pollution of our air, the destruction of our soil, and the contamination of our natural waters. So how can we find hope in so much despair? We as humans are resilient, as well as our Earth. We are able to withstand and recover from the harm we have done to our home. We are able to do this by grieving and learning from our wrongdoings and mistakes. If we start changing our practices to give back to our Earth, not just individually, but as a community, this is how we will build strength at the local level, and this is how we will build resilience. Today, we will hear from a couple of our presenters. Oh, sorry. Little pop-ups coming up everywhere in Zoom. Today, we will hear from a couple of our presenters on ways we are bringing hope and strength to the communities. So now I'm going to invite each of our hub locations to say a brief hello from where you are. I'll call on you so you can unmute yourself. And then I will invite my colleague, Reverend Rashenda Fairhurst, to start a blessing to begin our summit. So first, I'm going to start with Bend. I know you don't have sound, but I just want to say hello and thank you all for being here. And next, Dallas, are you able to unmute and wave and say hello to everyone?
Okay, gotta do it.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. And I see you all, Ben.
Great job, Taylor.
Thank you. All right. Eugene, are you able to unmute and say hello to all of us? Yes, we can see you. Hi. Welcome. And Medford. Hi, Medford. Newport. Hi, Newport. Hello. Pendleton.
Hello.
Hi, Pendleton. And last but not least, Portland. There you are. Hi. And to all our virtual friends, hello. Thank you all for being here too virtually. We're excited to have you all. All right. Reverend Rashenda, I will leave a blessing to you.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And hello to everyone. I'm so glad to see us all gathered here together. And I want to thank you for being part of this summit. So all of us have indigeneity within us. And so for myself, my mother was born in Aberdeen, Scotland, and my McCrae people lived in Aberdeenshire for generations until the advent of the motor car and the oil that powered it. I came to the US as a child, but my husband's family came to Oregon over the Oregon Trail. And in the last few decades, we have come to better know the story of what happened here. I live in Jackson County, a county named for Andrew Jackson, who ordered the removal, death, and mass suffering of Indigenous people. As Cain slew Abel, the very earth cries out. I live in the land of the Takelma and Shasta people. This was and is their homeland. My role in honoring them is to learn our history and the truth of the present moment. This afternoon, I offer a blessing to each and all of us whose feet touch the earth of Oregon. Let us pray together a prayer that reaches to every forest, every river, from the coast to the canyon, the Pacific giant salamander, and the sagebrush sparrows of McDermott Creek. And as we take on the challenge of our present moment, let us be a resilient and restorative people. Amen. It is my great joy and honor to introduce Domio Burke, who is a Soto priest and the guiding teacher at Bright Way Zen Center on the west side of Portland. She has spent many years exploring the relationship between faith and climate activism. She has engaged in disruptive, nonviolent civil disobedience as a priest and sought ways to help people face and respond to the climate and ecological crisis through her Zen teaching. Welcome, Domio.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to see everybody here today. So we gather today as people of faith who are deeply concerned about our climate and ecological crisis. So before us is the questions, what can we do? What can we do to stop the destruction? What can we do to help humanity find a better way? And our concern is practical. And what does the future look like for our children and grandchildren? What does the future look like for our communities of faith? In the next 5, 10, 20 years, the world is going to change dramatically, for better or worse. But of course, our concern is also spiritual. The world's major religions, to which most of us belong, tend to be major or universal, precisely because they are not tied to place. When facing our climate and ecological crisis, this is a shortcoming. If we look carefully into our faith traditions, we can find support for caring for the earth and for all living things, but such care is rarely a central message. In contrast, indigenous spiritual traditions the world over are inextricably tied to place, to the land on which people depend for survival. Where I live, the Tualatin watershed, the Kalapuya appreciated the significance and value of the oak tree, the acorns, the oak savanna, this stream, this mountain, this place. The seasons, challenges, and blessings of this land. Spirituality divorced from the land was unthinkable. Indigenous people understand they cannot overexploit or abuse the land on which they live without also hurting themselves. Those of us from faith traditions that are not tied to nature find ourselves in a moral and spiritual quandary. As beautiful and fulfilling as our traditions and beliefs and practices are, they are incomplete if they suggest we can honor and manifest our deepest spiritual aspirations while viewing nature as something separate from ourselves, merely as something to be exploited or enjoyed or ignored. Even if we are primarily focused on an afterlife, or in the case of Buddhism, enlightenment, how can our spiritual development be compatible with turning a blind eye toward environmental injustice, or with participating without complaint in systems that prioritize profits over people, or with enjoying material comforts that are condemning future generations to unimaginable hardship? Of course, if we are going to reintegrate nature into our spiritual and religious lives and communities, our message can't be all about doom and gloom. We have to create a vision for the future and the present that inspires. And that is why we are here today. and an event called Hope for Our Common Home. We will all come away from today more informed about things that we can do for a sustainable future, new ideas about what we can do, our communities can do. But the most important thing we will come away with is hope. And hope not based on the probability of positive outcomes, but on the strength of our love for life and on seeing that love shared by other people. If this many people care deeply, if this many people are doing their part to transform the way we live, how can we not have hope? As a faith leader, a Zen Buddhist priest with a community, I also have to think about how to support people who are struggling with despair, overwhelm, denial, and paralysis when they face our climate and ecological emergency. I know you also have such people in your communities and families. They're probably not here today. We need to help more people see action on our climate and ecological crisis as a spiritual obligation and opportunity. This isn't just because we need their help, because we do. It's also because, as I think many of the people here know, action is what empowers, grounds, connects, challenges, strengthens, awakens us. It's no wonder people feel despair and overwhelm and denial and paralysis when they take in a planet's worth of suffering every day while watching a screen. When their ideas about what action is limited to recycling or protesting in the streets, or when their sense of nature is limited to polar bears and that place where you go camping. Action gets us out of our heads and reconnected with life, with other people, with the system surrounding us, with the dirt under our feet. As individuals, the sphere of influence of our actions is naturally going to be small. But this is what Buddhist teacher and activist Joanna Macy calls active hope. Rather than base our hope on probable outcomes, we become active for what we hope for in the world. This is the spiritual opportunity we need to celebrate and share widely with our communities. Caring for our common home is caring for ourselves, transcending selfishness and greed, a lesson in humility and gratitude, a cause that can build relationships and connect diverse communities, a perfect opportunity to practice patience, compassion, generosity, self-restraint, and love. The ways we can take action to care for our common home are limited only by our imagination. And I look forward today to hearing from lots of different ways that action is manifesting. If you are in the Portland area and would like to join me and a growing interfaith community in outdoor spiritual gatherings to connect with each other and with the land, just do a web search for my name or Green Faith Portland to find our little group, Green Faith Y East. Just yesterday, we gathered for ritual and reflection at the sacred Five Oaks site in Hillsborough, called Chattaquin by the Kalapuya people for hundreds of years. We hope these gatherings will help and sustain people like you in the work that you do. So thank you all for being here and for whatever it is that you do to care for our common home.
Thank you so much, Domio. Such empowering and hopeful words. Thank you. So Reverend Bonnie Tarwater served as a parish minister in the United Church of Christ and Unitarian Universalist churches, and is the founder and minister of Church for Our Common Home, where she is presenting from as one of the hub locations in Dallas, Oregon. She and her husband, Dr. Walt Rutherford, offer counseling services and retreats at the Secret Garden Retreat Center at the John Cobb Eco Farm, where they explore biodynamic farming. This untraditional ministry worships in their barn with their animals and invites global friends on Zoom to join. The Interfaith Secret Prayer Garden has 12 altars on 12 trees over 5 acres, inviting prayers for the earth. She invites everyone to come love and be loved by the natural world. Today, Reverend Bonnie Tarwater will share about the crisis support groups that she has started for her community.
Taylor, thank you so much. You can hear me okay? Everybody can hear me? Okay, wonderful. And I've got this wonderful group here. So it's hard to talk to a machine when I have these live people here.
We're listening over your
Okay,
shoulder.
we're listening. We have ears, but it's just such an honor. And Church for Our Common Home, this is our second year of hosting an Interfaith Earth Summit. We hope to do it for many years. And we are so grateful for all the work that you, Taylor, have done. And the president of EMO is here, and we're so honored. We are just honored to be working with you, and we'll please call on us if we can support you in any way. I grew up, and I actually suffered from severe depression. And a long story, I didn't grow up in the church. I ended up going to seminary, and I had a conversion experience. I was just shocked at a God worldview and what Jesus taught. And I could learn to love my enemy, and I could learn forgiveness. So I was off to the races, and I became a parish minister, and was just so on fire, you know, to preach the good news and to share all that I had learned. And I found parish life to be very challenging. And I think you've heard a lot of churches are kind of in decline, and they're not, some of them, the most healthy environments. I also had wonderful times and served wonderful churches and met wonderful people. But I was going through a severe depression in 2015 and was really feeling disheartened about parish ministry. And Dr. John Cobb, a very profound environmentalist, philosopher, and theologian, invited me to participate in Seizing an Alternative, an ecology conference. And I had an awakening at this conference. You know, Bill McKibben was there, Vandana Shiva, and all sorts of real international heavyweights. And I really somehow got it in my bone marrow, the depth and the severity of our Earth crisis. We are living during the 6th extinction of life on Earth. And just as a side note, I have to say, I haven't been depressed in years. I feel on fire. And I know that whatever work we do in this world, none of us are going to, if it's worth anything, we're never going to see the result of it. So it is a time for us to gather together. And I think the biggest curse of the modern world is loneliness. Do you all know what I'm talking about? We have terrible drug problems. We have terrible depression. We have the pandemic made it worse, terrible suicide rates. Here in the richest country in the history of the world, we have severe depression. And also, it's depressing what's happening, what we've done to our planet. We're waking up. Oh my gosh. We have lived a life and had values that have had such a lack of care and sensitivity and any relationship at all to the natural world. I have become on fire, just sort of have it being a contagion around John Cobb. He is what you call a self-actualized person. And my invitation to you is, if you start an Earth Crisis support group and potluck party in your community, I'm warning you, you may become self-actualized yourself and become on fire, and you may start working in ways you never dreamt, because it's already happened in our little group here in Dallas, Oregon. There's a woman, Molly. She has a 15-month-old. She'll be here at 3 o'clock. She now has joined with us, only because we were in an Earth Crisis support group together. And it's a place where we share deeply what's really going on in our hearts and our spirits. We share truthfully about what's really happening in the world. And it's in a facilitated format, so it's safe. She now and her husband and son are joining with them. We're starting an eco village. Yesterday, we started planting oak trees and Oregon grapes, I think she called them. And we're going to have an entire oak tree savanna, which is indigenous to this area. That happened yesterday. She's bringing a preschool here in the fall. She's a licensed social worker, and she is now one of our facilitators at our Common Home Counseling Center that's helping people start these Earth Crisis support groups. So I'm just warning you, you might have more fun than you've ever had before. You just might. So this is how they work. It's a hybrid program. It's part 12-step program, because I'm a 12-stepper. I grew up in an alcoholic family, and I go to adult children of alcoholics and Al-Anon. And, I took John Codd to his first 12-step meeting. I took him to an AA meeting. I said, you're a fancy theologian and all that. I want to take you to the best church on the planet, because 12-step programs work. They are international. They're vital. They're we have so much to learn from them. And guess what? Bill Wilson got all of his ideas from guess where? The New Testament. Okay, they were all praying and reading and studying Jesus. Okay, so it's just good Christianity 101. And I know it's such a good program that it inspires atheists and people who are, have sex addiction and gambling addictions and everything else under the sun. So it doesn't, just because it started that way, it is the invitation for the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, to move within individuals and communities. So it's part 12-step, part psychological support group. I don't know about you. I've started many support groups. I have gone to many support groups. They work, okay? Like if you have
here.
Oh, we were just talking
Welcome.
about you. Welcome, you guys. At any rate, that's so if you have breast cancer and you're a woman and you get together with other women who have breast cancer and you have a safe place to share the depth of your sorrow and your fear and everything else, you become close very quickly and you feel better because you feel other people understand what you're talking about. We need to be understood. We need to express our feelings. Our feelings get stuck within us if we don't have a safe place to express them. So it's part this hybrid, this little recipe, 12-step psychological support group. And then don't tell anybody, but it's part church. Okay, we're not calling it church, but it's what they did for the first 300 years. They had church in people's homes. And what did they always do together?
We ate.
They ate a meal together. And everybody knows if you eat a meal with someone, you become friends. This is what diplomats do, yes? When the heads of states are enemies and they're at war, what do? They invite them to dinner, right? And when we break bread together, there's something that happens. It's some kind of alchemy. We know we're all human and we have shared this profound gift that Mother Earth gives to us every day, food to sustain us and to share. So we have 4 sections. We're actually going to have the experience of an Earth Crisis support group and potluck party here today. But I invite you because this wonderful woman, Edie, who comes to our church, she wrote a grant for us. We just got a grant to start 2 new groups in Oregon. So we are ready. Our gas is paid for, and I will come and give a sermon or give a talk at your community about how you can begin one. So the way it works is you first go around and everybody share. This is not rocket science. Those of us who led a lot of groups, it's like it's not like, unaccessible. You don't have to go get a PhD to create a safe environment. So you have first we always start with music, silence, or prayer, meditation. So it could be a Buddhist group, an atheist group. We have now a second group that started in New York that came out of a Christian church. So they pray together, okay? And we have a lot of musicians in our groups. We usually sing, but it could be silence. It could be anything. So in between each section, first section, we share how we're feeling. No interrupting. No, this is the thing. Who wants to go to a group where people give you advice and think they know anything? And so we just get to share what's happening within us. Then we sing, we pray, we have silence. Then the next part, we talk about what's going on in the world. I don't know about you, but I don't have many family members or friends or parishioners or my own minister colleagues who are able or willing to say, wow, I'm really afraid of nuclear war. I'm like terrified of fire in my neighborhood. The whole town, of Paradise burnt to the ground, and there's a fire that's encroaching on us. We don't have enough safe places where we can share our deepest concerns about what's happening in the world. Again, Nobody's interrupted. Everybody gets to just talk. Then the third part is where we have a potluck. Oh, the food has been fantastic. Now it could be very simple. We just make sandwiches, or people can go, hog wild and have, fantastic, delicious things that they share. This could be in a church. It could be in a home. It could be in a park. It could be anywhere. And we have simple directions that you read. So it's run like a 12-step program. So anybody can just pick up a paper. It's on our website. You can just read it, on your phone. And then we have conversation, sharing stories of hope, sharing our vision of an ecological civilization or the kingdom of God or what beloved community looks like. And we need this to be able to spend as much time, sorrow, and our despair as to imagine and to begin to see in our mind's eye and our imaginations the kind of world this crisis is inviting us to create together. Then we just share an action item for the week. We say some kind of prayer or blessing, and there you are. Voila! It's awesome. So we have money to share these with you. We have counselors in our counseling center that are willing to help facilitators or groups that would like to start these groups. And we are really excited about it and I want to share this with you. And thank you, Taylor. It's just an honor to be a part of your program.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I always enjoy your enthusiasm and appreciate you sharing about the support group that you've been hosting. We will be sharing out some resources later this week with the recording of this video of this summit as well. If you do have any questions for our speakers, you're welcome to ask them in the chat and we'll get those answers to you later this week. So now we have heard about ways in which hope and effort can be used as tools towards our climate. And I'm moving ahead, sorry about that. So our next presenters will be sharing about how solar panels can be part of a local climate resilient tool by cutting greenhouse gas emissions at our places of worship. John Pitney and Lou Stagnito co-coordinate the Interfaith Solar Campaign as part of their efforts to live a net zero energy lifestyle. The Interfaith Solar Campaign helps places of worship in getting solar panels on their roofs. So let's watch this video to learn more about their campaign and how you can take climate action too.
Houses of worship radically cutting their greenhouse gas emissions and advocating the same. That way, my wife and I were getting my grandson home. And he asked a question. He said, Grandpa, solar panels differently. Well, give an opportunity. Really kind of declined. I realized that our grandson and his generation are looking first in this new reality. We're gonna have even our family seeing 10 souls in our same family and at least 10 EVs. But more importantly, both Jackson.
All right. I'm sorry, I think some of the sound was being an issue. So let me try this again. Give me just a moment. Sorry about this. All right, thank you for your patience. Okay, I think it should work now.
Hi, my name is John Pitney. I'm a retired United Methodist minister, a grandfather, and with my friend Lou Stagnito, co-coordinator of the Interfaith Solar Campaign. Our goal is really simple. Houses of worship radically cutting their greenhouse gas emissions and advocating for the same. Interfaith Solar Campaign, we say, many paths, one sacred earth. The other day, my wife and I were taking our 5-year-old grandson home from school in our Chevy Volt EV, and he asked a question. He said, Grandma, Grandpa, what do solar panels do? Well, we put together an impromptu, webinar on the move about how sun rays tickle the silicon wafers and panels. It's really kind of magic, really kind of divine. And I realized that our grandson and his generation are immersed in this new reality. Looking at even our own family, I see 10 solar households in our extended family and at least 10 EVs. But more importantly, both Jackson's family, who go to the Unitarian Church here in Bend, and our family who attends the United Methodist Church, both of our congregations have major solar arrays on the roof. So it's extremely important our grandchildren are paying attention. And so what we're doing with the Interfaith Solar Campaign is inviting congregations to do something visible. So it really makes a difference when people see solar panels on your rooftop or on your property in the neighborhood and say, look, this church, this synagogue, this mosque really cares about the earth and what's happening to the future of our grandchildren. And the science is grim. We all know that. But we also believe that this is maybe one of humanity's best chances ever to stand up together, coordinate together, and be the community that we were created in God's image to be. So we're just getting going with this campaign in the last few years. But to date, we're in conversation with 60 or 75 congregations in Oregon and Washington. We're starting to partner with judicatories all over the United States, conferences and synods and presbyteries, and we're eager to work with everybody. Every once in a while, somebody comes up to me and says, but what can one person do? And my response to them always is stop being one person. So Lou Stagnito, tell us about churches getting solar.
We went solar, so can you.
We went solar, so can you.
We went solar, so can you.
We got solar, so can you.
We went 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 solar, so can you.
Okay, well, thank you, John. What you just saw in that previous clip was a congregation that actually did it. They took tangible climate action and are now reducing their carbon emissions. The Interfaith Solar Campaign was started to help congregations like Malala United Methodist bring their dream of walking the talk to reality. We started this campaign partly because we knew that of all the factors motivating others to take climate action, the biggest impact was when a trusted friend, neighbor, or institution does this kind of work. Faith communities taking tangible climate action will influence the behavior of others. So we are here today to ask you to help us build this movement toward a renewable energy economy as a way of mitigating the worst effects of climate change. Here are some things that you can do. One, if you're a congregation that has a roof that you think is viable for solar, please go to our website at interfaithsolar.org and complete a short intake form. From there, we'll get a meeting scheduled with you so that you can help evaluate the possibility of your congregation going solar. Now, if you're a congregation that already has solar, we also want you to go to our website and register to be a solar champion. We'll feature your buildings with solar on that page. We want you to tell your story. You can then use that post on your website as well. Third, contribute to this campaign, time or money. We're a volunteer organization and we need your support to help more congregations put solar on their buildings. Here's a final note. In a preliminary report, U.S. greenhouse gas emissions were down 1.9% year over year in 2023. That was the biggest decline in emissions since 2016. And this was largely due to a record-shattering number of solar power projects and utility-scale battery installations. This effort is happening all over the country and the world. Please get involved. Do your part. If not now, when? If not you, who? Thank you.
All right, so reaching outside of our communities to our lawmakers to make changes for a more resilient climate is necessary. By taking action regionally, we can advocate to those who are creating legislation that will change our laws in hope that we can protect our home and advocate for climate rights. To speak about turning our values into action, I invite Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon's Director of Public Policy, Britt Conroy, to speak. First, a little bit about Britt. Before EMO, Britt worked in the direct service, advocacy, and political roles, including as an advisor for immigration and foreign affairs for Congresswoman Lucille Roybal Allard, the first Mexican-American woman elected to Congress. Britt supported the Congresswoman in her oversight role as a member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security, and was charged with advancing the Congresswoman's legislation, including the DREAM Act, a bill to overhaul ICE detention standards and legislation to provide protections for youth working in our country's fields. Today, Britt will share briefly about the legislation EMO is supporting in the upcoming short session.
Thank you, Taylor. I really appreciate this. And it's just always every year a super impressive assembly of people of faith and people of goodwill across multiple hubs in multiple living rooms, multiple bedrooms on the screen here. Really, really exciting. Thanks for having me. If you are attending the Earth Summit, then you are more than aware of the fact that climate change is driving people around the world from their homes, and that climate change is impacting those who are unhoused, those who are low income, and those of our neighbors who are members of who are those and BIPOC community members in our own communities across the state. And I want to just briefly share a couple of our high-profile bills that we're working on this session. You'll hear in a moment from Representative Con Pham about the Clean Oregon Assets legislation, the COAL Act. We're really, really proud of the work that has gone on there. We're also focused on two other bills I want to tell you about really, really briefly. First, Oregon has one of the highest rates of youth homelessness in the country. In fact, we have the very highest rate of unsheltered youth homelessness. That means that more than any other state, if you are a teenager, you're separated from your family, and you don't have a home, you are most likely, more than any other state, to be on a park bench, sleeping behind a school, sleeping in a car. And every single session, we want Oregon to move closer to fully supporting and housing young people experiencing homelessness. We want to make sure that young people do not become the adults experiencing homelessness in just a few years. So we have a request purely in the budget space, not a bill number, to invest $6 million in further supports for young people, especially for organizations that serve culturally specific culturally specific neighbors of ours. We know that youth of color experience homelessness at higher rates, and in a recent grant process, Oregon wasn't in a position to fund any culturally specific organizations doing this work. We need to change that, and that's working on that this session. Again, $6 million. Also briefly, we'll send around more information in the follow-up email, but we're really excited that tomorrow, at the first hearing of on the first day of the legislative session in the Early Childhood and Human Services Committee, we are presenting a Pathways to Citizenship bill. This is a bill that Representative Ruiz from Gresham for several years has advocated for, and now it's a bipartisan committee bill. It has had unanimous bipartisan support in the past. And what it says is simple, that those who under federal law have existing legal pathway to permanent residency or citizenship, but don't have the means, the financial means to pay an attorney to do so, the state will come alongside and help those Oregonians move away from fear and move toward opportunity and dignity in our state. So this is an immigration legal services bill we're really, really excited about. Just one quick stat, 1 out of every 3 Oregonians who is undocumented actually has a pathway like this. So this is a great tragedy in a moment when our national discourse is incredibly nasty, when we have a presidential candidate who is promising if he comes back to power, he will usher in mass deportations and deputize local police to help carry out those deportations. We really believe that now is the moment to make investments to protect Oregonians now and in the future by providing them with a pathway to citizenship. So those are our 2 really primary areas of focus this session, in addition to the COAL Act. I want to talk about that and its champions. So Representative Con Pham represents Oregon House District 46. Representative Pham is a dedicated advocate for climate, energy, and the environment, serving her 2nd term as the first Vietnamese American legislator in Oregon. She plays a pivotal role in the House Climate, Energy, and Environmental Committee and the Joint Committees on Transportation and Full Ways and Means, our budget committee. In 2023, Representative Khan secured significant funding for climate action and green infrastructure projects. She recently recognized as the Environmental Champion of the Year by OLCV. Representative Pham is committed to climate justice, inclusive democracy, and a well-being centered economy. Khan's extensive experience in community organizing and environmental justice grounds for advocacy is incredibly clear. She holds a BA from Lewis and Clark College and a master's in urban studies from Portland State University, specializing in urban planning, climate change, adaptation, and equity planning. Today, as I mentioned, she is here to speak about House Bill 4083, the Clean Oregon Assets Legislation, or COAL Act. Representative Con Pham, welcome.
Thank you so much, Britt, and thank you all for having me here today. I'm so excited, and I'm always inspired by just groups of people coming together to talk about their values and their vision for the world and how to work together to take action to build the world that we all need. So I will just wanted to first say a little bit about myself before I start talking about my priority bills, including the COAL Act. So I am a mom, a community organizer. I've done a lot of my community organizing here in the J District, which is in the heart of Oregon House District 46. I am the daughter of Vietnamese refugees, and in my visits over the last 20 years, I started to see how the people who are least responsible for climate change have had to bear the brunt of the extreme heat and the flooding and the saltwater intrusion and the more destructive hurricanes that have come through. And at the same time, I was seeing that people in the US were also being impacted, and it wasn't equally. Again, it's our most vulnerable community members, low-income immigrants, farm workers, folks who can't afford air conditioning, our unhoused neighbors, and others who are, again, hit hardest and first by climate disasters. And so for me, climate justice is personal. The people that I love and care deeply about are impacted. They're not just numbers to me. And that's why I'm willing to fight so hard to make sure that we don't just, take superficial action, but that we really address the root causes of this climate crisis, which are rooted in inequality and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small few. So that's one big reason why I introduced the Coal Act, because we have to start attacking the financial underpinnings that really allow for the continued extraction and burning of coal and other fossil fuels. But let's start with coal, that are impacting communities of color and low-income communities the most. So we already know that coal is one of the dirtiest and most polluting fossil fuels, and that the pollution that comes from coal plants does hit fence-line communities hardest. And that's why Oregon decided to phase out coal as a power source starting in 2016. So we have tried doing a full-on fossil fuel divestment bill, and we weren't able to pass that. We had significant opposition from the treasurer and others. And so this time we worked closely with the treasurer's office to find a bill in short session, given the short timeline, we could pass and at least take a step towards eventual full fossil fuel divestment. And that's how we landed on just focusing on coal, because I think more and more people understand that it is a dying industry. It is causing many people to die, and that there is no future in continued coal investment. California actually passed a very similar law in 2015, which mandates the phase out of coal investment. And CalPERS, their pension system, estimates a positive impact of $598 million in the first 6 years of implementation. And similarly, we've seen Oregon's coal investments are also underperforming. And we know that coal is a dying industry that is going to have declining value over time. And so it's important for us to get out while we can. And that's why an increasing number of financial institutions are exiting from coal. Not just for climate reasons, but because they want to avoid being left with stranded assets. And so I'm very excited to work with EMO and all the other environmental and climate partners, because this is about building a movement that really challenges the logic of this extractive and exploitative economy, and that says, you know, well, I guess I won't say the negative. I'm saying we're building a movement that says people and our ability to have a livable planet are more important than maintaining the status quo. In this case, maintaining weakening profits. And we know that there's no stable retirement on a dying planet. And so we can have both. We can invest in solar and renewable energy and all the future of energy, and also get good returns, as we're seeing from the recent, what some of the last speakers were talking about. So I also wanted to make time to talk about my second priority bill, because we know that we can't do any of the climate legislation that we need or any of the help to help homeless youth or with funding of education if we don't also stop the corrosive and destructive and now constant walkouts that are allowing a tiny minority of Republican legislators to block the very climate, wildfire, reproductive health, violence prevention policies that our communities desperately need. And so my second priority bill is HJR 202, which is the simple majority quorum referral. We only are allowed 2 bills. And so for me, I thought very carefully about which of the 2 most important bills both had a strong coalition, but also were most important in this moment. And I think this is a key democracy reform. As many of you all have watched, Oregon has suffered from walkouts that have shut down our legislature every year for the last 5 years. And the reason we see that is because Oregon is a weird outlier among US states in requiring a 2/3 supermajority for the legislature to conduct its business. And this has allowed a small minority of legislators to totally shut down the legislature's ability to fulfill our basic responsibilities to pass laws and to pass our state's budget, including just even keeping the lights on in schools and, the very most basic responsibilities. And so HJR 202 would refer to the voters a ballot referendum that would change our constitution so that a simple majority of 50% plus 1
would be required for the state legislature to do business. This would align Oregon with 46 other states in the US and with US Congress. This is an important pro-democracy reform. I think most Oregonians believe that majority rule is a basic tenet of democracy, and it would allow us to have a functioning state government, which in this time of increasing attacks on democracy is necessary. Many of y'all probably have seen Measure 113, that the Oregon Supreme Court ruled on Measure 113 recently. But it means, I mean, in the short term, I mean, in the long term, we'll see how much that actually deters walkouts. But you know, I will just say in this short session, it means that there are several senators who have said, including the Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp, who've said, we have nothing to lose, and I don't think we are going to show up. And if they walk out again this session, this bill is important to be able to point to and help educate the public about the problem. And so I really would ask that, you know, my faith partners in EMO really join me in helping to educate the public about the problem, which many people understand the problem of walkouts, but the solution is changing our Constitution, because we can't allow a small minority of legislators to continue to hold our legislature hostage year after year and undermine people's faith that their government can even work for them and even meet their needs, which is very, very corrosive. And so I wanted to invite our broad-based climate justice movement to also start to see itself as a pro-democracy movement. We need to, of course, keep talking about campaign finance reform. And though we need to talk about quorum reform. And even though I know that because of the problem of quorum, the Republicans would probably walk out if we introduced this referral, but this is a key messaging tool and education tool, because we won't be able to win this at the ballot and change our Constitution until people connect the dots. And we have to help them connect the dots between, you know, the walkouts or the funding for schools that they want to see passed to this constitutional change, to just align ourselves with the rest of the country. So those are my two priority bills. And I just wanted to close by saying that I know many of you all probably have talked with people who will say, oh, you're being so idealistic, you don't understand investments. And they'll say we're being unrealistic, but I guess I just wanted to reaffirm that the true realists are the people who are grounded in the realities that our planet and our people are facing right now. And that we realize that business as usual is just untenable. Our ecosystems are bumping up against real limits. Their laws of physics really trump any human laws that we pass. And so I really look forward to collaborating with all of you as we spend the next critical few years transforming all of our systems, from housing to transportation, from forestry, but also our financial system. And that's what the COAL Act is all about. So thank you so much. This legislation wouldn't be happening without the participation of so many volunteers and activists, including many of you all in this Zoom room. And I am excited to fight and organize and win on this and so many more climate and justice policies in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Pham. We're so honored to have had you today to share about your priorities, and wishing you the best of luck. And we're all here rooting you on. So thank you. Now we're going to take a brief little stretch break. So you have a couple minutes. We're take a break until 2:38. I know it's a random time, but that's about 3-4 minutes. Just if you want to stretch yourself out or run to the bathroom real quick, and then we'll continue on. So we're taking a break until 2:38. All right, welcome back. Hope you were able to get a little stretch, maybe a glass of water. We're going to begin again. And Rashenda, we'll have you start.
All right, thank you so much. Folks are stretching and getting back to the plenary. I will go ahead and make our next introduction, someone I just couldn't be more glad to introduce. Dan Saris is the Advocacy Director for Columbia Riverkeeper, which works to protect and restore the Columbia River and all life connected to it. His advocacy is extensive, working against the build-out of new fracked gas infrastructure, including pipelines, LNG terminals, fracked gas to methanol refineries, and now the GTN Express expansion project. Dan's leadership is a blessing to a wide coalition, including Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon and Oregon Interfaith Power and Light, with amazing success in blocking huge new fossil gas projects in our region. I have had the honor to march with Dan against crude, methanol, coal, and LNG projects. He has my admiration and deep gratitude for the leadership he brings to this work. And to start, Dan has recommended a video from Senator Jeff Merkley, who is himself a determined advocate to stop the proliferation of fossil fuels through sound public policy. The video was recorded at last year's People's Hearing, organized by the Stop GTN Express Coalition. Back to you, Taylor.
Allison, thank you so much. And thank you to Road Climate and the Stop GTN Coalition for holding a people's hearing. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, wouldn't hold a hearing of its own. And as mentioned, we need people power to take on these projects. It's so much more effective to have voices, yes, in some, as many elected officials as possible. We need that outside voices to really make any sort of movement effective. And you've all been very effective. When I think about the broad picture, our big challenge with climate chaos is to quit burning fossil fuels. It's to electrify everything with renewable energy. But the last thing we should do is continue building more fossil fuel infrastructure. In doing so, we're not only creating infrastructure that will facilitate the burning of fossil fuels for a generation to come. We're also facilitating the donations that flow from that to corrupt our political system to keep supporting fossil fuels. And we are absolutely undermining our leadership in the world or our partnerships in the world because we can't tackle climate change by our own. It has to be in partnership with other countries. And it's very hard, I would say impossible, to go to another country, and virtually every country has a smaller per person footprint than we do, and say, hey, we're building more fossil fuel infrastructure, but please, you all don't do the same. Stop using your coal, stop using your oil, stop using your fracked methane gas. But, oh, by the way, we're going to keep doing it. And it's in that context that this project is so wrong. It's wrong because it amplifies the amount of fossil fuels that will be consumed and burned and add to the atmosphere, and it undermines our partnership and working with the rest of the world. So the FERC needs to hear from all of you, and thank you for holding this hearing. This is an unnecessary and it's an unwanted project. It does the opposite of what we're trying to achieve in Oregon and Pacific Northwest for our climate objectives, to contribute to the solutions, not to make the problem worse. We see in Oregon the effects of the climate changes. We see it in the longer, fiercer fire season. We see it in the smaller average snowpack. We see it in the droughts and the dropping groundwater levels that affect our ranchers and our farmers. We see it in the warmer, smaller streams that flow from the snowpack, which are bad for salmon and bad for trout. We see it in the acidification of the Pacific Ocean. In other words, you cannot go anywhere in Oregon and not see the impact. And now we're not talking just about warmer temperatures in cities. We're talking about hitting the fundamentals of our rural economy. our farming, our ranching, our fishing, our forestry. This project only makes things worse. It would increase the capacity of the pipeline by at least, well, the fancy name, 150,000 decatherms of fracked fossil gas per day. And you just heard that it will translate the equivalent of adding, I think it was 750,000 more gas guzzling cars on the road. That is just an enormous impact. Here we are trying to transform transportation from the fossil world to the renewable world. And a single project like this, massive increase in the equivalent of the pollution that stems from it. FERC's own environmental impact statement says it's predicted to cost $9 billion in climate-related damage over the next 28 years. And that's using a methodology that systematically minimizes the impact. In fact, FERC says that they can't say exactly how the fossil methane gas is going to be used. They can't be factored into their decision-making. Well, listen, here's what we know. Higher pressure in the pipeline means more methane gas is going to leak out of the pipeline. And we know that doubling the amount of gas that goes through the pipeline means you're going to double the amount of gas that is burned, and therefore doubles the carbon dioxide impact. So of course we have at least a ballpark understanding of the impact it will make. And for FERC to say, oh, we can't just say exactly, well, will it be used in a stove, or will it be used in a furnace? Will it be used to generate electricity? In any those situations, it's burned and it produces carbon dioxide. This is evidence of a corrupted organization that will only change with the people power that all of us bring to bear on it. I can tell you that there is nobody in my blue collar community that if you double the amount of gas that burned, will it have no impact? And they're like, well, of course it'll double the impact. I mean, it's that clear. It's that obvious. So let's keep going forward with our determination here. This flew under the radar a bit because instead of a new pipeline, it's doubling the pressure in the existing pipeline. Doesn't matter. It's equivalent to doubling the capacity of the pipeline, doubling the damage. And we have to double down in our fight against it. So let's proceed to do exactly that through this people's hearing, through the follow-up comments to FERC, through every type of people action that we can organize and make happen. I am just honored to be in this fight with you.
Dan, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen and share a few slides to kind of orient folks around this project. Can you see this? Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, Rashinda. I got to know Rashinda years and years ago when she was the best MC ever to an icy hearing about a huge oil train terminal in Vancouver, Washington. And it's a good place to start because I think that GTN Express effort to stop this big expansion it sits in the context of a larger regional effort to stop fossil fuel expansion. And it's one where faith leaders have had an enormous impact, going back to coal export terminals that were proposed, liquefied natural gas terminals, oil train terminals, methanol refineries, pipeline expansions. As Senator Merkley said, this GTN Express project is a challenging one because it involves adding more fracked gas from Canada, produced in Canada, into an existing pipeline system that's decades old, and essentially pushing more fracked gas through an existing system. So there is not the addition of a brand new pipeline, but the pipeline that runs through many communities would be, or the pipelines, I should say, would be seeing more gas flowing through. As Senator Merkley said also, locking in more fossil fuel, this would be 20% more gas than Oregon uses as an entire state. So it would be a big addition to Oregon's greenhouse gas emissions. At this time, it makes less than 0 cents. It's actively in conflict with Oregon's climate change emissions reduction goals. And that's why the states of Oregon, Washington, and California have all weighed in opposing this project. So for our part, Columbia Riverkeeper is part of a large coalition, including Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Oregon Interfaith Power and Light, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, Earth Ministry. You heard mention of Rogue Climate, 350 Deschutes for the folks in Bend, been super engaged. People all the way up in Idaho Rising Tide, Wild Idaho Rising Tide, I should say. Veterans for Peace in Spokane. There are people all over the region. 350 Seattle has been very engaged. Physicians for Social Responsibility in both states. Broad and growing coalition that caught on to this project and has been pushing back. So what is a compressor? I'm going to go through a little bit of the nuts and bolts of this project, and then I'm going to talk about the broader implications. As gas moves through a pipeline, they need places where they can essentially recompress that gas and push it further down the line. The proposal in the GTN Express project would be to add compressor power in 3 locations so that they could push more fracked gas down the line. The pipelines operate at very high pressure, hundreds of pounds per square inch, in this case, up to 800 pounds per square inch. I'm showing this image because I think it's kind of inspiring. This is the compressor station in Kent, Oregon. On the left is a picture I took yesterday morning. I was out in Central Oregon, a beautiful blue sky day. And on the right is a picture that I think Cherise Bach took in the summer. And what I noticed is that nothing had changed. There is no construction at this site, and that's a direct result of the organizing and advocacy of people in this group and far beyond. Through pressuring FERC, we were able to hold off the decision to approve this project, which unfortunately came in late 2023, and we are still challenging that approval in federal court. And even now, communities are organizing to oppose the project. So who's driving the project? This is a little bit murky, actually. There's a utility in Idaho that would buy about half of the proposal. Cascade Natural Gas, which is the utility in Bend, Oregon, would buy a slice of it. And then a company called Tourmaline, which is a fracked gas producer in Canada, would also buy a slice of this project. So essentially they buy a chunk of the capacity of the pipeline system. And that commitment to purchase that chunk allows the company to turn around and propose to FERC to expand the system. This draws into play people all over central Washington, eastern Washington, Oregon, diverse geography. And this is an image of a vigil organized by faith leaders in Spokane, Washington. And they held this vigil to draw attention to the fact that as these companies push more fracked gas through an existing system, that puts at risk the people who live near these pipelines carrying flammable fracked gas. So it highlights that there are many reasons why folks have opposed the GTN Express project, and Senator Merkley mentioned the 3.47 million tons per year of greenhouse gas emissions. That's a huge, daunting impact if you try to think about how the state would be reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. GTN Express would end up swallowing just on its own a big chunk of the emissions allowed over the long term, over the next couple decades. And so the states of Washington, Oregon, and California have all argued that this is in direct conflict with their goals for reducing greenhouse gas demand. It also puts a burden on ratepayers because if, as we expect, fracked gas demand starts diminishing over time, then the people in our communities who are sort of locked into that gas system, whether through power or direct gas consumption, they end up paying more as the number of customers diminish. The people stuck in that system will pay more and more. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission actually did not grant TC Energy the right to charge existing ratepayers with the full cost of expanding this project. That was quietly kind of a win. Even though the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approved this project, they carved out this piece of the decision which did not give TC Energy everything it wanted in terms of rate treatment. That's, again, kind of quietly a big deal, and TC Energy has appealed its own approval because they not only want to build this thing, they want to stick everyone with the bill. So a little bit of maybe overreaching on their part. We'll see how that plays out in the legal case. This slide just summarizes the many issues that we see that are problematic with this project. I won't go through it all, but I think that the other piece I want to highlight is that the proposal would drive more fracking in Canada. And so there's a much broader context here, even than the impacts we'll see near the compressor sites or near the pipeline systems. TC Energy's pipeline system is enormous. It's 2 pipelines running side by side, has the ability to move over 1 billion cubic feet of gas per day, closer to 2 billion cubic feet of gas per day. And that is a phenomenal amount of gas. To fill that pipeline and keep it running at the pace that TC Energy is proposing would involve expanding fracking in northeast British Columbia and northwest Alberta. All of that gas would be flowing through Indigenous land, whether it's in Canada or in the United States. And it's important to acknowledge here that the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission opposed the GTN Express project. Their comment was pretty terse. It was about 2 pages long, and it said, and I'll summarize, if FERC had bothered to hold a hearing to meaningfully consult with the tribes or to read the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission energy vision, they would have known that there were conflicts with the project and the plans for our region and diminishing gas use. And so CRITVIC recommended that FERC deny the project. These issues remain unresolved, and the federal government did not meaningfully respond to these concerns. So when the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approved this project, the states of Oregon, Washington, and California all announced that they were going to oppose it. The same goes for Columbia River Keeper and Rogue Climate were officially interveners in the proposal, and so we are also able to challenge it, and we are in the process of doing that. Just a couple of weeks ago, almost 150 organizations across the United States urged the US EPA to press the Biden administration to reconsider the approach to GTN Express, highlighting major flaws, as Senator Merkley talked about, in how the greenhouse gas emissions were assessed for the project. So our coalition, including Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Oregon Interfaith Power and Light, and dozens of groups grew even more, and seeing almost 150 groups from across the United States was really encouraging. Thousands of people have weighed in with FERC, and while FERC chose to ignore the concerns they raised, it helped to elevate the broader conversation around how the federal government is rubber stamping these fracked gas projects and loading future generations with infrastructure and gas emissions that they will have to account for later and unwind. So the list of opposition is growing and very large. There's 9 members of Congress now in the Northwest who oppose this project, and in California. There's a large and growing coalition of frontline groups who are speaking up about the impacts of not just GTN Express, but projects like CP2 down on the Gulf Coast, which is slated to be approved by FERC, even though the Biden administration has placed a pause on the U.S. Department of Energy approving export licenses for LNG terminals. Many folks here I know are familiar with LNG export because of the Jordan Cove and Oregon LNG projects in Oregon. And we feel like these express projects where companies are looking to expand existing pipeline capacity are sort of an end run around the opposition we've established in the Northwest. And that grows more and more with every month. This is a shout out to the folks in Bend who organize frequently to hold demonstrations to raise awareness. Bend is an interesting spot because the pipeline downstream from the compressor runs right alongside a planned affordable housing development in Bend. And there are similar issues in the Spokane area. And I want to acknowledge the great work that Ricardo Waits, Satya, Austin Opper, many other folks have been doing in Central Oregon to draw attention to this. Diane Hodiak, 350 Shoots. They are having an impact in helping people understand that this is a big potential public safety issue. And then I'll just give a couple images from my latest drive through Central Oregon. So who is really driving this demand? Ultimately, what we see is major gas-fired power plants, data centers, huge consumers of gas. They are the anchor customers most likely for this large gas demand expansion, or this large gas expansion. This is a picture of one of Oregon's biggest polluters, the Hermiston Generating Plant. It sits in a cluster of gas plants that emit a huge amount of both climate changing and health harming pollution in the Columbia Basin. This is in the background, you can see the Coyote, I think it's called the Coyote Springs PGE gas-fired power plant. This is in Boardman, Oregon, with a playground in the front, and you can see the emissions in the background. This is an image showing, this is from an environmental health disparities map from Washington. So you can see the Columbia River, it's all mapped to the north of the Columbia River, but this area ranks 8 out of 10 for environmental health disparities. The air quality in this region is unmistakably impacted by the large amount of fracked gas that is burned both in data centers, but also in power plants in this region. Oregon's largest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions are gas-fired power plants. And finally, I just want to really highlight this last element, which is the public health and safety impacts that people have been drawing attention to. Leaders in faith communities have been pointing out that there are communities of color, there are frontline communities that are close to these gas pipeline systems that run through very rural, underserved, and fire-prone landscapes. This is an image of a gas pipeline explosion. This was a TC Energy gas pipeline that ruptured and burned 48 hours before FERC was slated to make a decision to approve GTN Express. There was an emergency response. You see folks here who rallied in front of a FERC office, and FERC delayed the decision, and it was months later. It took them months to come back and approve this project. This approval risks creating very much the same type of risk that we see here in Virginia, where this pipeline ruptured. And obviously, if this were to happen in a dry, fire-prone, windswept landscape like Central Oregon near Bend, the ramifications would be huge. And finally, I just want to touch on very briefly the impact of fracked gas production. This is Arlington, Oregon, where in 2020, over 2 million pounds of radioactive fracking waste was dumped in Oregon illegally. And today, there are still elevated levels of radioactive contamination in this landfill. Now, it's a lined landfill, but the leachate at the bottom of that liner is quite radioactive, many times the drinking water standard for uranium. It's a surprising thing to learn that fracking produces radioactive pollution, and that this stuff gets shipped all over North America or stored in places with that are not lined, that are not protected. And so this is just a wake-up call again to people across the region that we have a positive impact to make by diminishing fracking, because it saves future generations from having to deal with this kind of stuff. Creative actions like projections, rallies, protests letter writing campaigns, letters to the editor, vigils, all of them have had a big impact in helping to stop the GTN Express project to date. So as of yesterday, no construction, and we will be watching closely and alerting folks when we find out if that changes. So here are just a couple ways to get more engaged. I've run a little bit over time, and so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share with you all and for all your work. It's been a big effort, and you know, this time last year, we were really just getting started, and what a difference a year makes or doesn't make in the case of compressor construction so far. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate you sharing about all the saddening harm that has been happening to our land, but also all the opposition and all the work that you and others have been to stop this pipeline. So thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Dan, do you mind? Oh, thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Melanie Martin, Susan Heath, and Peter Fargo to share more about their campaign, advocacy, and coalition building experience in support of statewide environmental initiatives. Oregon Citizens for an Environmental Rights Amendment, OSERA, is a nonpartisan coalition that is now organizing to amend the Oregon Constitution in recognition of every person's right to a healthy environment.
Thank you so much. I'm Susan Heath, and I'm an advocate in Lynn County. We have just begun. I want to thank you for inviting us because this is our first public presentation for OSERA. Our group is the Oregon Citizens for an Environmental Rights Amendment. We are a nonpartisan coalition, and we just got together in late 2023 because we recognize the need for this type of amendment to our Constitution. There were actually three groups that coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, were working in parallel on this type of legislation. And through mutual friends, we found each other just in December, and we've been working together ever since. So today we'd like to cover these four things: the draft amendment, our moral case, legal case, and how you can help us if you find that you're interested. So let's see. The potential amendment could read something like, every person, each child and adult, has the right to a healthy environment. This right includes, but is not limited to, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and a stable climate to protect life, liberty, and property. The right is inherent, essential for health, safety, and happiness, and self-executing and enforceable in court. So Peter and Mel are going to make the case for this amendment and the possible routes that we can take here in Oregon. And so once again, I'd like to thank you and turn this over to Peter.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you, Taylor, for bringing us all together today. Can you all hear me okay? Great. So this is a slide that almost anyone on this Zoom call could present because we are all here for the same reason. This is about who we are as a community of Oregonians. This is about the hope that we hold on to as people of faith and goodwill, and the action that we are led to take with that hope and with that sense of this is the right thing to do. So we want to begin with the human rights case for an amendment to protect everyone's right to a healthy environment. And I just want to think for a moment about what we're all doing here. What we're doing is so powerful. People of faith and goodwill coming together to do the right thing. Whenever that happens, I think we need to be ready for revolution, because that's exactly what happened at the founding of our nation, people of faith and goodwill came together to do the right thing. And there's a document you might be very familiar with, our Declaration of Independence, in which this statement has become so famous. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that is one of the best arguments for this amendment to protect everyone's right to a healthy environment, because truly this is about life. This is about what we need to live. Everyone, every person, every child, every adult needs clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and a stable climate to live. And of course, that's not all. We need all of the elements of a healthy environment to be present for us to thrive. So we believe, and we hope you agree, that a healthy environment is the foundation for all other rights that we have articulated in our founding documents, in our Constitution, in Oregon's Constitution. And yet, these rights, these foundational rights, are not yet codified in our state's Constitution. Love, of course, this is about love, because we don't live just for ourselves. We live for our neighbors, we live for our families, our children, and for generations and generations to come. And they all depend on us for their well-being. This seems to go without saying, but for me, it took a little while to really get this in my heart. Our daughter, Rachel, she just turned 10 in January. She was born in 2014. And I began to learn what it means to be a parent and what it means to sacrifice for someone I love on a completely different level. But it took another child for that to really come home for me. Our son, Sam, was born in 2019, and he just turned 5. And there was a moment for me where all of that head knowledge about our climate emergency, about our multifaceted environmental crisis, all of that knowledge just dropped into my heart like a ton of bricks, because I was holding this human in my arms, and I knew he and his sister depended on what I did next and what we all do next. So that's where I'm coming from in working on this amendment project, because this is an opportunity to say this is who we are as people, as Oregonians, and our Constitution is where we put Oregon's values in writing. Martin Luther King had a common refrain in his speeches in which he would say, America, we are asking you to put it in writing, and we're asking you to make good on what you've put in writing. And that's what we're asking the people of Oregon to do here, to put it in writing in our state and to make good on what we've put in writing. And I'd like to introduce Melanie Martin next.
Thank you so much. So as Peter just laid it out pretty clearly, being good stewards and protecting our beautiful creation is a moral issue. It's a moral duty. So how does that translate into the legal solutions that we have before us? I will not bore you with the legalities and the lines of authority like the Commerce Clause and Public Trust Doctrine and various state and federal laws and regulations that all come together to create this legal framework that we have today. But I will say this, we the people currently do not have the right to a healthy environment. We don't have the right to clean water. We don't have the right to clean air to breathe or otherwise. We have the clear expectation, right? Very shared, very presumptuous. We expect it, but we don't have the right. There's nothing to enforce when something goes wrong, and our very lives are in future generations, lives and interests are at stake. We should have an implied right though, right? It should be implied in our other inherent natural rights to life and liberty, but that's been litigated, and unfortunately, courts have held that that's just not enough. It has to be written down somewhere. So that's why we have to put the right expressly into the state constitution. So once the amendment becomes law, it will not only be a tool of accountability in and of itself, it will provide even more powerful tools to hold the government accountable. With a clear line in the sand, there'll be even better laws and better enforcement of those laws. Courts will have the power to ensure that government does its very best based on the science and not industry politics when it comes to protecting our natural environment that we need. Quick point, this is not a new or novel approach. Because of the nation's environmental movement back in the late 60s, early 70s, 2 states at the time had declared their rights to a healthy environment in the Bill of Rights section in their state constitutions, Montana and Pennsylvania. And a couple of years ago, New York joined the short list of Green Amendment states. And as you may have heard, there are reasons why certain cases succeed in states with green amendments where others don't. Held v. Montana is a very recent example. And over a decade ago, there was an incredible legal shift in Pennsylvania's Green Amendment, which came alive to prevent an egregious amount of fracking activities from harming their communities statewide. There's plenty of history and information about green amendments. We don't have time for today, but you can go to a couple websites that are tracking these and in one case leading it. That would be Green Amendments for the Generations. I believe it's forthegenerations.org. And also Our Children's Trust is also starting to help out in this venture. So as you can see in this list of states here, Oregon would be joining a long list of other states working to advance their green amendments through citizens and legislative initiatives. Oh, by the way, you are also welcome to join us at this year's PILC, the University of Oregon's Public Interest Environmental Law Conference, which is the first 3 days in March. We will have a panel dedicated to this very issue on Sunday, March 3rd, 9 a.m. And we'll include panelists from the Green Amendments for the Generations and Our Children's Trust, along with a few other important perspectives on the issues here. So here is your chance to join us and even help lead this movement in Oregon if the Spirit moves you. We welcome each and every one of you, both individually and organizationally. And on May 4th, we'll be congregating in Salem for a statewide organizing meeting, and we hope you can make it. And even if you can't, please click on this link to sign up for more information or just to get added to our email distribution list. You have the option of holding your phone camera up to this here QR code, which I'll try to keep up for another quick minute, or you can click on the link that should be in the chat. Or if you can't do that, just tell your event organizer that you would like to contact the great Peter Fargo, and I'm sure that will happen. We are grateful for being able to speak with you today. And as you can see, we are in the beginning stage of this. We're still working up to set up a website, for example. But if your congregation or denomination, your organization or a group that you're a member of, if y'all would like to hear more, hold a separate informational event in the future, or if you'd like to get in on the fun at this foundational stage, please join us. You can participate as much or as little as you wish, but you'll be part of something pretty momentous. So let's be good stewards, and in addition to supporting all the other incredible efforts you heard about today, let's build a coalition of our times to amend the Oregon Constitution with a fundamental right to a healthy environment, for environmental justice, for climate justice, for hope, active hope, effective action, for a sustainable, constitutionally protected future in our common home. So Thank you again, and back to you, Taylor.
Thank you so much. Well, congratulations on you all. I know it's beginning steps, but we are excited to see where this is going to go. And I do encourage everyone to join them in Salem on May 4th. But right now, thank you all to the presenters who have shared with us today, each of their unique ways in building a resilient community. Initially, it starts with hope, then building strength, first individually, and then together with others in groups, coalitions, and communities. Next, putting the work in action. And finally, by advocating to our lawmakers to change legislation. All of these cannot be done without the other. We need the hope of many individuals so that we can collectively work together to change our laws. This is how we build a resilient community to effectively build a resilient climate to fight our current climate crisis. I hope that you are able to take away something you have learned here today to share with your own community. After our Zoom plenary, we invite you to have conversations, build relationships, and learn about the resources and organizations that are available in your local regions. By building these networks throughout the state, we are working together on building climate resilience now. So our statewide presentation is coming towards an end. This is a time I want to say thank you for committing this afternoon to learn, to share, and to build relationships. Thank you to all of our speakers that we heard from today and to all those who are joining in our regional conversations. Thank you to all of our host locations for their commitment to the environment and for planning the regional conversations you will soon have. As we close our statewide presentation, I invite each of our hubs to light a candle. And for those who are joining us virtually, if you are able to light a candle or shine a light, we will close out together in a climate vigil. So I'll invite Peter Fargo, Laura Hudson, and the Climate Vigil team. And after our vigil, we will close our Zoom plenary and allow for a break. The regional locations will begin their specific programming, and those who are joining us virtually, we will have our own virtual conversations if you'd like to stay on and join. So thank you everyone for participating in Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon's 11th Annual Climate and Earth Summit. Thank you so much. And Climate Vigil team, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Amazing work on this whole event. And it's such an honor to be part of this closing ceremony for this Zoom portion of the event. And then I know we'll be going to our in-person hubs and into our Zoom after party, if you will. So we're just really excited that we can be part of this moment. Climate Vigil is calling on people of faith and goodwill to come together in support of a sustainable future, to bear witness to our climate emergency and take hopeful action to end it. And this is just what we're doing on Saturday, May 4th. Osira, who we just heard from, is organizing and leading our statewide organizing meeting for the Environmental Rights Amendment. And Climate Vigil is providing the closing ceremony for our statewide organizing meeting on May 4th. And we're very excited about this opportunity to offer up a symbol of our rights, of our hope-filled action and commitment, and of course, of our solidarity in this work. So we invite you to participate in both. Wanted to once again refer you to that link in the chat if it's still there. That informational link is good for both the statewide organizing meeting on May 4th and for the closing climate vigil. The statewide organizing meeting, we intend to have a capacity of about 150 people. So these are community leaders and organizational representatives who can mobilize 10 or more people in service of this campaign in the future. But for the climate vigil, we're looking at up to 300 people. So if this is something that you and your congregation, your denomination would be interested in, then we would absolutely welcome your participation. So just to give you a little sneak preview, we intend to have music, we intend to have speakers, and we'll have tribal blessings at this event because we'll be standing on sacred ground. We'll be lighting our lights, of course, And we are going to do that now, just to give all of us an experience of the vigil and a taste of what's to come on May 4th. So before we begin, I'd just like to invite you to find a candle or to find a flashlight, or perhaps your LED light on your cell phone would suffice. And we'll be lighting those as we move into the next segment. But before we do that, I would like to thank my pastor, the Reverend Cindy Wonder of First Presbyterian Church in Baker City, and also my spiritual director, Laura Hudson, who you'll hear from shortly, who is the co-pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in La Grande. And both of them helped me to write this liturgy. And then we have several liturgists who have volunteered from our climate vigil team here in Eastern Oregon, people from Pendleton, La Grande, and Baker City. So really grateful for all of your time and participation. And with that, Laura, I will hand it to you.
Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you to Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon and all of you who are gathered. What a privilege to be with you today. So we're going to begin this time with a song, and it's one that you probably know, "This Little Light of Mine." For you to know this, we're going to hear the song through a video from a studio recording by the Porter's Gate Worship Project, which is also part of the Climate Vigil Songs album project. Peter helped to launch it on the sidelines of the UN Climate Conference in Glasgow, and you can find the Climate Vigil Songs on any major streaming album platform. It was a top 10 in Christian music on its release day in 2022, and it's been downloaded and streamed more than 1 million times. I'm actually putting the link to that in the chat. And as we play the song, I invite you to find your light, both figuratively and literally. So I've got one here for myself, candle, flashlight. As Peter said, you could just use your phone light. But when you're ready, go ahead and light your light. And we invite you to put your Zoom on gallery view so you can see and appreciate the lights that are being lit around our state. If it's possible for you, please turn on your video so that we can see you. And may we be mindful of the presence of the divine light within each of us, the same light connecting all of us in this beloved community. Go ahead and hit play, Taylor. Thank you.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Can't take away my love, I'm gonna let it shine. Can't take away my love, I'm gonna let it shine. Can't take away my love, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Ooh. it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thank you. And I invite you to say together, wherever you are with me, we hold the light. We hold the light. This light is a symbol of life, a sacred gift for each of us and for every living being. Like this flame, we need oxygen. We breathe in the oxygen provided by countless plants and microorganisms. We breathe in life, we breathe out life. Let us take that second breath. We are grateful for this moment, for this life, for this light.
We are grateful for the light. We have inherited this light from all those who have come before us, from all those whose love brought us into being, who gave us life and sustained us, from indigenous stewards of the land, from human, civil, environmental, and climate rights activists, and from our ancestors' faith and goodwill.
We carry the light. Our light exposes injustice and bears witness to the pain of the world. Communities suffering from heat, drought, fire, and smoke. Unprecedented floods and rising seas swallowing nations and states. Failed crops, hungry families, and lost livelihoods. Millions of people forced to migrate into a future of uncertainty and marginalization.
Our light is a symbol of truth. That our planet is hotter than ever in recorded history. That it's getting hotter still. That such rapid changes in temperature and precipitation threaten our capacity to live here on this planet. That we are witnessing the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet, and it is completely human-caused. That climate catastrophe impacts all of us. Yet even more than us, it impacts those least responsible and those with the fewest resources to adapt. And even more than that, it impacts our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. That this is a profound injustice against the poor, the marginalized, the young, and those yet to be born.
Our light helps us to see the community of life of which we are a part, that we are joined to a procession of land, plant, animal, and human, from eon to eon, from generation to generation. That we are one family with our neighbors and our descendants who depend on what we do next. Our light helps us to see that everyone has the right to a healthy environment, to clean water to drink, to clean air to breathe, and a stable climate to live. Our light helps us to see that these are essential human rights. They make life possible and are the foundation upon which all other rights rest.
Our light reminds us that we are powerful together. We are more powerful and resilient than we know. We are joined in the power of life itself, seeking new life. Our power is not driven by domination, but mutual connection and collaboration. We can share our power, just as we can pass the flame of our candle from wick to wick, and our flame does not diminish, it multiplies. We are sent into the world with the power to cultivate the change we need. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are creation and recreation. We are Genesis and regeneration. Together, We are the light of the world. May our light shine before others, and may it serve as a warm invitation for all to join this movement toward human rights, environmental restoration, and climate justice.
Amen. May it be so. Thank you to all of our readers. Thank you to all of you for bringing your lights figuratively and literally. And we welcome you to do the same on May 4th in Salem under the Oregon State Capitol. So let's keep our lights lit now as we transition from this time of reflection to our next time of reflection and conversation at our in-person hubs, and also the next Zoom session for those of us Zooming in. Thank you again. And Taylor, would you like to send us off?
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I hope you enjoy your conversations that you have after this, and we just appreciate you spending this time. We will take a short break for those who are staying on virtually, and we'll probably take about a 5-minute break. I'll put that in the comment section. But for those of you who are in your regional locations, thank you so much. Goodbye. We appreciate you being here today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.